Hi, welcome to the Addiction Recovery Place podcast, the podcast champion addiction treatment professionals around the world. I'm your host, Chris Langley, and I'm very pleased to introduce today's guest, Lena Sheffield. Lena is a licensed mental health counsellor, a certified addiction professional, and a master addictions counsellor based in Florida. Lena is also the president of the Florida Association of Addiction Professionals, the Florida affiliate of NADAC. Welcome to Addiction Recovery Place podcast, Lena. It's so good to have you with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, very excited to talk to you about the extensive work that you're doing in your state. So, Lena, can you tell us about yourself and some of your career journey so far, please?
I will. So I am down in Miami, Florida. I started a long time ago in inpatient treatment back in the days when there was longer lengths of stay and there were a lot more interdisciplinary, right? We had the luxury of having a lot of intense family therapy and art and music therapy and a lot of, really comprehensive treatment. And it was a great time because the mentors that I worked with were very aware that addiction and mental health and family dynamics and attachment and all that was kind of intermingled sometimes, and some people it was more addiction bringing them into disruption or sometimes disruption in their life. Substances was a good way to cope. But this was at a time when a lot of the 28-day programs were just strict. Just stop using 12-step, no family therapy, no medications. So it was kind of nice that now I see so much more about dual diagnosis and co-occurring that, the people are starting to realize that they're not isolated. So inpatient, I did a lot of clinical. Then I became administrator where I got to learn. At first I didn't like it, but I learned to appreciate the business side of this field because, again, we love helping people, but it is a business, So then I had to learn about joint commission and insurance contracting and budget and all that. And I came to really appreciate policies and procedures. So I don't know. I think it's kind of like my 12 years of Catholic school. I'm good with rules. But I valued them, not unnecessary, but the ones that were important. So that was important. Things really changed, with managed care. I then went to national marketing and education where I got to travel around the country. And I loved it because I got to meet people in all kinds. I did a lot in the southern states and a lot of towns that were so talented that were doing such amazing work. So it was really humbling for me to go into a small town in America and they're doing that's really cool, and how skilled so many of the professionals are that, we don't see them in the spotlight, but there are a lot of people doing great work out there. So I was doing more eating disorder training. So in the eating disorder group, I got to train them about addiction and substances. And then in the substance world, I had to teach them about eating disorders. Because again, back then, now we're seeing the overlap, but back then it was very separate. So just, kind of increasing that awareness so that they don't miss it. But at the same time, I was doing in-home therapy and I was starting to get pretty burned out. So I love doing in-home therapy. I still think clinically it's the best way to go because you get to see so much stuff that you would never see, in an office. So I thought it was time to let me go ahead and try private practice, which I was a little leery of because I'm used to teams. But then COVID hit and private practice was perfect, because I was able to do telehealth and I also started teaching online. So I've been able to do that. And the way I make my connections is I make sure I do lots of networking. I know those marketing reps, how hard they work. So if they call, yes, I will meet with you, right? Because I know it's all, we got to work together to do this. So, So and part of the reason, because when I do teach, one of the reasons that I like people to know, there's so many ways you could work in this field. And it's not just in a treatment center, one-to-one with a person, right? There's so many ways that you can get involved in this field and so many populations. And there's so many more that, I'm still amazed at that people are doing really great work at.
Yeah, most definitely. So what do you most enjoy about your work and career, Lena? What is it that gets you up in the morning to, drive you?
Your curiosity. I was talking to somebody today. I love hearing people's story. Rather, we all make assumptions based on how they present or what they look like or, what they check on their intake paper. But I want to know what's that story? How did this maybe maladaptive behavior, how did that come to be? Was it really helpful at the beginning and now it's gotten out of control? Or is that the only option they had? So just kind of getting to know the whole dynamic of the person, right? And helping them be aware of that, to understand this is really awful behavior you're engaging in right now, but it makes sense given, what you've been through or what is being told to you as an option right now. So trying to not judge, even though, inside I might, but, kind of understand where they're coming from. And, was it a TikTok post that they learned about this particular treatment? And okay, let's check it out together and let's be wise consumers.
So what aspects do you find frustrating about work in this sector? Because obviously, there's things like insurance, external issues beyond your control. You also just mentioned TikTok. There's a lot of these TikTok so-called influencers who just have massive followings, but they literally have a lot of influence, and it's concerning for me hearing about this. And you just mentioning this as well. That's can you tell us a little bit about that, please, Lena?
So definitely funding is always an issue, right? And I think part of it is we're just not a strong lobbying industry, right? We don't have the money. We don't have the muscle. People in our field just want to help, right? They don't want to go to Washington and, donate money to try to get, laws changed, so it's easy to get frustrated, but we still have to keep trying. So insurance, people don't like insurance, but at the same time, people are paying a lot of premiums, so you don't want to be paying, I pay lots of premiums for my insurance. And then to find out that I got to go out of network, that's a lot. So that can be frustrating because I'm in network with a few, but not a lot of them because reimbursement isn't great with some of these companies. And if they are, then the amount of work that it takes to stay compliant could also be, you need them to hire someone to do all that. So, and I understand why, because there is abuse. So, we know that there is abuse of either insurance companies. So there's got to be some rules and regulations, but it makes it a little bit harder. And not everybody could afford self-pay. But I think that's important. Another reason to have all that networking so that I know, wait a minute, you've got this particular thing. Wait, I've got a group that I can go and ask and find out, get some resources for you. I may not be able to, but I can find somebody else. So that's definitely a big challenge. I think telehealth has really helped with access to care. I know Miami, when COVID hit, is when I realized people going to therapy was a 3-hour process because of traffic. So now if they've kids at home where they can't, leave work early or something, that we could get on screen and do it, so that's a little bit better. So social media, good and bad, right? I'm probably addicted, just like many of it, it's hijacked my reward system. I think the good thing that's happened is it's increased some awareness. So a lot of times, especially the adolescents, the parents are like, I don't know, my kid thinks they need a therapist, and then it's like TikTok. I'm like, yes, I think I have, X, Y, Z, which is fine because it gives us an opportunity to educate them. You know what? That's really not what bipolar is, or that's really not, trauma. That's really not bullying. You just didn't get invited, but it gives us an opportunity to examine what they're interpreting and either educate or also learn, there's other ways of doing things more, right? We certainly don't have the answer. We have not figured it out yet. So let's be a little open to what some influencers are putting out there. I've gotten great resources that I found, people that I follow online, and there are people that do this for a living and they're very, very creative. I'm better at sharing than creating. But, the whole social media reward hijacking is the new problem now, right? Because the attention span is so low and we're so used to that immediate gratification, which ties into then just wanting to take a drug, right? Just wanting that immediate release because that's what they're used to. The one thing that I don't like, particularly on social media, is that there's really this message of if you don't feel good around these people, just kick them out of your life, right? Or you should always be 100% happy. You should be living your passion because that's not real, right? Part of therapy and counseling is being able to increase your tolerance and set boundaries, but it doesn't mean just because you don't like these people that you're never going to talk to them again. So I think sometimes there's extreme messages on social media that aren't real, and then people feel like failures, right? At the same time.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take on that. I really enjoyed listening to that, Lena, because I've getting different views on influencers, and you see the kind of dangerous side of it, but obviously you've just spoken about the positive side of it.
Yeah, so there's some positive. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. When you decided to go into your own private practice, what was it that made you decide to take the leap to do this?
That was a hard one because again, I'm really comfortable working with teams and organizations. But I think it was later in my career, and I thought, I haven't really done it yet. Why not try it? Right? Let me try it. Worst case, I'll go back to a treatment program or something. But I wanted to see, I think also just to see would people actually pay me to come, work with me. Like it wasn't the name of the company, it was actually me. So that's pretty rewarding. And the flexibility. So I think that's for me, the best part that I could, like today, I don't need to see a client because I'm going to do this, or, I have another doctor's appointment or I want to go to a yoga class. So there's flexibility, and that's very appealing to be able to do that. But the risk is some of the financial stuff and some of the business side that, we don't learn that in school. I certainly didn't, right? We don't learn counseling is a business, right? It's not just a feel-good thing with people, but we have to pay taxes and we have to, keep our licenses up and all that stuff. So I was fortunate that I had people that I could, join a group at first and sublet an office space from, so that I didn't have to jump in 100%. I was able to just do it, gradually. And I like it. I like it. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on taking the leap. I mean, obviously you're doing very, very well at the moment, which is lovely to hear. When we first met, Lena, when we first did our pre-podcast call, you said that you're teaching for the Sober College School of Addiction Studies. Can you tell us about this certification program and how it works? It sounded really interesting.
So we do not do a certification, right? And that does kind of bother me on social media. A lot of people have created their own certifications, and who knows, anybody could create an organization apparently. No, but the program, and I'm one of the instructors, provides the coursework that you need to get certified within your own state to become an addiction counselor. So we're just doing the academic portion that you need. Depending on which state, you may need 6, 7, or 8 courses. So I'm able to teach those online, and then they have to go through all their state process for certification. Whether it's a NADAC state or some states like Florida have their own certification board.
Yep, I understand.
Yeah.
And how long have you been doing that for?
Gosh, I think almost 10 years. It's been a while. The students, many of them are in recovery, and the message of hope is unbelievable because, a lot of our students, a lot of people in our field, have really, really lost a lot. And their tenacity, they keep coming back and they want to help other people. And it's amazing. It really is amazing. It's one thing to just choose, I like this field versus, I almost died. I lost everything and I had a really good experience. And now I want to give back and I want to do this for other people.
So you're mentoring of students. That must be incredibly rewarding work. I mean, like you just said.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. Also, you mentioned your career beginning with volunteering way back in high school. Do you think that volunteering has since become less important in society, would you say? Or
I know when my kids were in high school, they all had to do 75 hours of volunteer hours, right? I think it was like a mandate. I was president at the time, right? Like the message was volunteering is important. And I made my kids really volunteer. But I know a lot of the other kids, their parents just signed off on it, or they went and did something, they hosted at somebody's dinner party. I mean, they didn't really take it seriously. I've just seen in organizations that I've been a part of that it's harder to get long-term commitment from people on a volunteer basis. To be able to just give up their time. That's possible, maybe for me, it's my networking as well, and I feel like, it's advocacy work and it's learning about what other people are doing so we can, get ideas, and it's stimulating, but, maybe for other people, they're getting that somewhere else. I just think there's so many opportunities instead of complaining or I wish, this would happen or that would happen. There's a committee for that you could join. There really is. You can definitely volunteer to be on one of these committees, either at a national, regional, or local level.
Yep. Most definitely. I'd just like to move on and speak about the work that you're doing for NADAC, Lena, because you're the president of the Florida Association of Addiction Professionals. How long have you been a member of this organization? You can tell us about the great work that you're doing in Florida.
So I was trying to think of when I joined NADAC. I know I got my Master Addiction Counseling designation from them in 1996. So I think I was a member even before then. But the Florida group, I kind of was in and out. I wasn't that involved until probably about a year ago. Bobby Hayes, who would have done this podcast, she was the president for about 15 years, and she's still on board. And she really kept the Florida group together. And now we're trying to get, again, more people to get more involved so we can see what does our state want. Because every state's a little bit different, and we want to know, do they want, continuing education, which NADAC is great at, or, do they want more connection? So, we've been sending out some surveys, just trying to get more involvement and revitalize that NADAC is the organization for addiction professionals, right? So why not use them? Why not get involved and let them know what you need? Because I know they're there to kind of serve us. What do we need?
Yeah. So you'd obviously recommend to anyone who's considering starting a career in addiction counselling to join NADAC. Can you tell any of our listeners who are considering joining what are the many benefits of joining are? Because it's an amazing organisation.
Yeah. Well, definitely one is connecting with other people, depending on your state. And again, some states are really, really strong and they have their own trainings. I think they speak for us. They're outside of DC, and they really are involved in a lot of the legislative work and really speaking for us at times where we forget about it or we don't know how to do it. So the people there are really being advocates for this profession. The other thing is they have a huge library of educational webinars that are free. And I think if you're a member, the continuing education's free, but they've got a wealth of webinars there. I mean, there's probably no topic that isn't covered in, all the years of webinars they have. But I think a lot of us just belong in that identity. You belong to a very established, it's been around for a very, very long time, an established organization that so far seems to be, really having our back.
Yeah. So what future plans do you and the Florida Association of Addiction Professionals have for 2025, Lena? Have you got any big plans?
Well, we are going to try to do our own internal little in-services, just utilizing some of the resources of the members we do have in Florida, right? Because we do have a lot of great people, and keep trying to meet. Florida is such a long state that it's hard to meet in person, right? Because, it could take 12 hours to go from the top to the bottom. So, we're trying to utilize more of the, Zoom meetings. We do meet monthly and try to get more involvement. And the more I'm learning about the national opportunities, I'm trying to get our members involved at the national level too. So if I know that they've got this area of interest, I've already, there's a committee for that, out of the national office. Let me put you two together. So, which I like doing that. I like, bringing resources together. Maybe that was my networking side, but I think it's important now. I know somebody who might be able to help you with this, I don't know, but I know I can put you in touch with somebody, so I think that's going to be an opportunity too. And to work with the other organizations, right? Because we have organizations that are well established for treatment programs, for sober living programs. And we're not in competition. We're all trying to, work together to offer a great transition for clients. So let's pull our resources together.
Yeah, most definitely. So if somebody was listening to this podcast who's in Florida and they're considering joining NADAC in Florida, how would they go about contacting you?
I think if they go to the NADAC website and join, I think if they live in Florida, that's your address, then they become a Florida member. And I know on the website, they do have the state chapter. So my contact's there for Florida. And we do have a small Facebook page that is growing for FLAP. So it's FLAAP, so you can always, go there. And I try to write a little bit on the NADAC also has a great forum where people ask each other a lot of really good questions. So I try to have a little bit of content on the Florida forum too.
I've seen that. Yeah. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful. Last couple of questions, Lena. I ask all my guests this because stigma of addiction and mental health trauma is still such a massive impact on people accessing services. Why do you think it is in this day and age that we still have such an issue with stigma? And do you think it's improving somewhat?
I think it has improved somewhat. A few little good things really came out of the pandemic. One of the things that I got kind of excited. There was much more talk on the media and the news about the importance of connection on, the data that more people were consuming alcohol, that there were more, emergency room visits, just the whole idea that mental health was really, really impacted by the isolation. Right? So that to me was really, really important. Like we've known that, but it now like regular people on, whether it was Fox or CNN or MSNBC, they were all saying it, so it wasn't polarizing. But we still have the stigma, the words, you're a drug addict, you're an alcoholic, you're a cokehead, instead of, you are struggling and you have a problem with this. I think we still have not educated the healthcare community enough. So a lot of their knowledge, I think, unfortunately hurts us because, clients will go to get medication, for a legitimate mental health situation. And, I say, did you ask them about, can you drink? Can you do all that other stuff? Oh, they said, yeah, that's fine. Moderation. So, did you tell them moderation is 12 drinks for you? No. No. So, we can help with that by getting release forms signed so we can collaborate and educate the doctors. Like, that may be a good drug for, medication for somebody, but you need to know what else is going on with this client. Maybe not such a good idea, right? Not to overstep our bounds, but, help educate the healthcare community as well. I think that's really important. I think we're still weak on that. And the jokes, right? I mean, it's funny to see people that are drunk or wasted, right? We make fun of it on TV and the movies, and it's glamorized. It's still the shows, the old Mad Men, but it's still on shows where people are always, have a drink in their hand. It's just so normalized. So it makes it really hard to say, well, my dad had a drink every night before he went to bed. What's the problem? Like, okay, maybe it was or maybe it wasn't, but you're also adding da-da-da, and you're not able to get up in the morning. But we want to make assumptions, and we don't want to acknowledge it because then we're flawed.
Do you also think that politics can have such an effect on addiction in the recovery community? Because it seems to be quite a big issue, I would say.
Well, yes, because politics influences a lot of healthcare coverage. It influences laws. It influences, how we perceive, jail time versus rehab. Our officials, elected officials, are part of whether or not beds get approved, whether or not treatment centers can be opened or closed. They can influence what insurance will pay and not pay. So it kind of goes back to, a little bit of that lobbying or getting involved in that area, because if they don't hear from us, they're going to think everything's fine. I mean, I hear it all the time, like, oh, we designated this much money for this and that. And most of us are sitting in the room. It's like, oh, where's that money? We haven't seen it. So we need to speak up. We need to let people know, people in government, or people, with those kind of power, know that this is what it actually looks like at this level. And, whether or not you have a certain amount of benefits, that really is inadequate. And educating, again, about, just because one treatment center costs this much money and the other one costs 5 times as much, they may not be the same thing. And it's not that one is better than the other, but there is a difference. Some people are like, well, why should I do that when I can get this? Or this is too much money, I can't go to rehab. It's like, wait, there's some other programs too, and there's outpatient. And we know that there's also more outpatient medication options. There's also more legalizing of products and substances to treat that still a little unknown, right? Anybody can come up with research to back up their business, but it's still, kind of questionable. We can't say never ever because we don't know, and it might be helpful for some people, but, we're a media-driven customer. And then, people get upset about politics, and about, a lot of the rules. And, I've been around long enough to know this is not the first time we've been upset with government, right? Like, it happens periodically, and we're in a panic, but if you're that distressed, and then now with social media, we might make it even more divisive and, instigate more and get people more agitated. And then, people are starting to feel hopeless and helpless about things, where maybe it doesn't have to be that much. They could use their voice and be upset about things, but it doesn't mean that they should go get wasted because they can't stand what's happening.
Totally get that. Absolutely. Lena, I ask all my guests this question because I get very interesting and varied answers. But can you tell me your opinion of harm reduction and how it can play such a role in recovery?
So I'll speak more personally from my own experience and my, things that I've learned and clients that I've had. I think there's a place for it. I mean, and it's a vague term because some people call harm reduction as, well, we're going to get off these drugs, but we're still going to let you, have cannabis and vaping and drinking, right? And is that better for some people? Yeah, that may be a good start. That may be a good compromise. For others, harm reduction might mean that they're going to get medication, medication-assisted therapy. A lot of motivational interviewing is about staying with the client and not pressuring and not pushing. So in a way, that's harm reduction too, like being able to tolerate that they're doing something that was so dangerous, and we kind of predicted this is really, really going to spiral badly, right? But we're like, no, are you willing to cut back to only the weekends? Knowing my husband, that's not going to work, but it might, right? And the other thing, we don't know people's addiction physiology, right? Because there really are people out there that can do moderation, right? And there are people out there that choose not to do any. And there's some people that really need 100% abstinence, right? So what we might offer for one client might be just devastating for somebody else, right? So to me, harm reduction is also meeting the client, knowing what the client can and cannot tolerate, and what are they willing to do, and not that we're like, oh, okay, that's fine if you just want to get high. We can still keep educating them about it. I have clients that are sober from all of those drugs, but they're still vaping, and we're still going to work on this vaping when you're ready, right? Because that's not good for you. So harm reduction, I think, has its place, but we have to do it very individualized, and we have to know what the risks are for that client. And what are they doing? Where are they putting themselves in danger? And do we have a backup plans, and do we give a lot of Narcan in my office just in case? Just take that with you just in case. So yeah, but I know even the medication stuff, a lot of the old, the diehard 12-step people, I know that's fake. You got to go through it. But there are some people that, I think they say in AA, unconstitutionally incapable of total sobriety on their own, right? So if there is some medication that might help with low side effects, let's try it. Why not? Why not? As long as they're still doing their own work.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that, Lena. Last question. Do you have a message for anyone who's listening to this podcast who's going through an addiction?
Oh, yeah. There are many ways to get help. If you're not ready to acknowledge that you need maybe to go to a residential or detox, we have the stages of change, right, is still something that we teach. Pre-contemplative, like, I don't really think I have it. I think I can handle it, right? So pre-contemplative, probably people are telling you a lot of things. You're getting some consequences, but we all think we're omnipotent. We can handle it. We can take care of it, but that may be the time to, let me check with somebody. And you can go and see somebody and say, I'm not ready to quit, but I do want to explore, why am I using so much, right? So not to be afraid to reach out just in case and explore. In the end, you should have autonomy to do what you want to do. Now, not everybody, depend on how severe things are. The other thing, if people are saying like they have no money, but they want to check it out, go to some 12-step meetings. If you don't like the whole concept, there are many other ways to do it. There's Smart Recovery, She Recovers, a Recovery Dharma, Celebrate Recovery, right? There are a lot of different ways that you can, find mutual aid communities where you might resonate with the people. You might feel like, okay, they get me. They're not here to shame me. And even if you do go to a meeting and just don't like the group right there, try another one. And if you're not willing to go in person, go online. You can go on a AA meeting in Switzerland if you want to, whatever, if you want, anonymous. Right. So do something. If you really feel like you're physically getting sick now, and you could start to see, by the time you're really starting to see physiological consequences, things have gotten pretty bad, right? Because our bodies are pretty resilient, unless you got a dose of something really, really, heavy. Don't be afraid to go to the emergency room. Your peers, if they're starting to be concerned about you, listen to them, right? Parents will always nag and complain, right? Employers may complain. But when your drug-using buddies are the ones that are telling you you're going too far and we're worried about you, that's a pretty, big red flag that even they think you're doing too much. Right. Call. You don't have to really commit. Start making some calls. There's plenty of podcasts right now that, you can get. Some of them endorse it. Others are scare tactics, so that's not good either. There are a lot of different messages. And of course, there's plenty of people online that are going to tell you that it's perfectly fine what you're doing. People know. They know when this is not a good thing for them. Reach out. If you want to use your insurance benefits, you could contact the insurance company. You could look online at your insurance company or Psychology Today, or even NADAC, may have a directory of people and treatment centers. Just look around. You can ask your physician. A lot of times physicians really don't have resources. Honestly, I think you may be better off going to a 12-step meeting and asking people there, who do you guys see? What do you do? Going online. The treatment centers a lot of times will have self-screening tools just to kind of get an idea of I think I meet criteria. I think this is pretty serious. And that may be a way, if you call them, they may try to, get you to go to their program, but you could be upfront and say, look, this, and this, I can't, I have kids or I have a dog or, I can't leave. Do you have a suggestion in town? Because again, those marketing reps have great resources. They really do. They've got, I had such databases of people around the country, so you can ask even if you have a therapist, your therapist can also look to see if there's a program that might be good. And it doesn't mean you're going to get shipped off to, a very expensive program. It might mean you're going to go to an intensive outpatient program. Or maybe you are going to meet with somebody who, you've been in and out of programs already. Well, why don't you try some? Maybe the medication would help. I guess explore. There's lots of options. The days of it's only a 28-day program, that's gone. There's plenty of options now. So,
yeah. Thank you so much for that, Lena. The last question, can you tell our listeners how to best contact you and to find your service online?
You could go to Psychology Today is a really good resource, just in general, because it itemizes a lot. Like you could put in maybe what insurance you have or, what, problems you have, and it'll do a little bit of a screening for you. So that's a really good place for mental health. In the eating disorder world, there's a great program, a great nonprofit called the National Alliance for Eating Disorders. And they also have a list of people that are trained in eating disorder, not just people who check it off on their box. NADAC has a list. SAMHSA has a list. So Psychology Today is a good way to reach me directly. And I'm on LinkedIn too. On regular social media, I don't connect with clients or potential clients, so it would have to be more through Psychology Today. Yeah, and just anytime people are looking for somebody, most of the time we can provide services within the state we're licensed or certified in. Mm-hmm. So if you can't find somebody in your own community, expand it for the entire state. Regardless whether you're in Ohio, or Kentucky, or Florida, New York. So don't think you can only look in your little community. If you're willing to do telehealth, you can go for the whole state.
Well, Lena, thank you so much for your time today and telling us about your wonderful career and the great work that you're doing in Florida. It's been a real privilege to talk to you today. And
thank you
so
for
much
doing
for
this
me.
and bringing awareness to everybody.
Yep. I appreciate that. Thanks so much, Lena.